As HR and L&D, I also see the struggle that we struggle to influence and get a buy-in from our leaders. We need to flex.
And what people are looking for, what we're seeing, is that people are really looking for skills that are transferable.
We are not new to technological advancements. It has been happening over the last 2 decades. But we have taken jumps and we have taken leaps.
You really want to think about what's coming in the future. And again, because of employee-centered, that essential skills should equal transferable skills too.
Hello, and good morning to everybody who's signed in. Just take a minute or two for some more attendees to join the webinar today. Thank you for being on time. And while we have people coming in, I do have an interesting question to ask, and please use the chat option to drop your thoughts. What's the one word that comes to your mind when you think of a future workplace? And it can be many words too. It'd be nice to have your inputs as we get into today's conversation. We should start in about 2 minutes from now. All right, with more responses coming in, I'm so happy and glad that all of you have joined in on time. And we really have a beautifully crafted team of expert panelists today to talk with us. The workplace is evolving. And the question is, are we really keeping up? And as a community, we all love answers to our problems. But do we even know what's changing? Do we even know, is there a problem with this change? And the good news is we as a community of people function are stronger now more than ever, coming together, sharing insights, failures, trends, observations, and much more with each other. In a world where talent is key, how can organizations stay ahead in attracting and retaining the best talent? Seems to be the burning question too. Today, we will explore insights, best practices on what, how, and why we need to do something now about the future of workplace. And with that, I'm excited for today's conversation, and I welcome you all once again to the webinar on the future of work, redefining HR and L&D strategies to explore what's next and how you can stay ahead. The agenda for today is simple. We have a good 40-minute conversation with lovely insights and experiences from our esteemed panelists, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A and interactions. Please use the Q&A section to share your insights, wow moments, and experiences, best practices, challenges, and if not, your ideal dreams for your people function, right, in today's world and in the future workplace. We have 15 minutes dedicated for this later in the webinar. I'm Arun, your host and voice for the next 60 minutes. I enjoy all things people, culture, and change, and curious about the future. Our vision at MARG is to build organizations that are future ready. With that, let me welcome our panelists to this lovely conversation. I welcome Unger, CEO of Emergenetics, a passionate leader who has set the strategic direction of Emergenetics to empower teams to simplify human connection, build positive and productive workplaces. She brings more than 15 years of experience in strategic leadership and 20 years of experience in education. Welcome, Mari.
Hello, Arun. Hello, all who are joining. I am thrilled to be a part of this conversation and really excited for the work that is being done right now with MARG, but with other organizations as well, to really prepare us to be future ready. We have to, it's here. We talk about the future, but really it's here, it's upon us. So I'm grateful to be a part of this conversation. Thank you.
Awesome, Mari. And next I welcome Sinead. Sinead brings more than 25 years of experience in OD leadership to her role as Regional Director and Head of Global Strategic Partnership at Emergenetics. Her experience spans across OD, change management, talent management, people strategy across diverse sectors, regions of the world, and sectors ranging from tech, M&A, consulting, public sectors, SMEs, and much more. Sinead, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Arun. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here today. I'm really excited just to be talking and understanding about what's happening in this part of the world and trying to bring my experiences of what I've seen in other parts of the world as well.
Happy, Sinead. Happy to have you on board with us. And last, we have Sudeshna, CEO of MARG Business Transformation. She comes with 25 years of experience and is definitely a force to reckon with. An entrepreneur with decades of experience in finance, business consulting, and leadership strategy, Sudeshna is the driving force behind the talented team at MARG. With her vision, passion, and strong business instincts and understanding of the unique intricacies of the Indian business environment, Sudeshna is definitely carving a niche for MARG in the training industry in the space of people, culture, and change. Sudeshna, nice to have you with us.
Thank you, Arun. Thank you for the kind words. And yeah, as Marie and Sinead said, that today we are very excited, especially for the group who's attending today. We feel that would be the backbone of all business in the future.
Absolutely, yes. And let us directly get into talking, right? So with all that is happening around us, from the AI age to gig economy, multi-demographic workforce with 4 generations under the same roof, and so much more. Interesting times for sure, but there's also a lot that we as the people fraternity are literally figuring out on the go. The question that I have for you three is, are we really ready for this unprecedented skill churn? If yes or no, what trends do we see, considering we are in interesting new times as part of the 4th industrial revolution?
Okay, as we are seeing it on the screen also, when people are talking of the future, people are talking about a lot of tech. So technological advancements, we are not new to technological advancements. It has been happening over the last 2 decades, but we have taken jumps and we have taken leaps. So I would call the leaps as, the internet or the mobility, the cloud, and now the AI. So it's definitely a leap we have taken, which has made it very unsettling, because we are talking about obsolescence. We are talking about things, so jobs becoming obsolete, and hence the churn, as you're talking about, in skill and everything. So it's not only the time to kind of, get the skill set in order, but to get that skill set, this mindset of, that's something new we have to learn continuously, is something we need to kind of, also take into order. And I think that's why the churn, we are using the word churn again and again.
Yeah, Sudeshna, I if I can jump in for just a second. First of all, Arun, you asked the question, are we prepared? And I think the interesting part of that question is some of the things that we know that will be essential in the future are actually things I think we've always known, to be honest. The preparation is going to come with the prioritization of it. What I mean by that is, we know from the World Economic Forum that while there'll be significant jobs lost because of the automation of things, we are in the 4th industrial revolution. The 4th industrial revolution, as we all know, is the introduction of advanced technologies. But where the World Economic Forum says we're going is actually the creation of jobs that don't exist. And so in order to be prepared for those jobs that don't exist, we're going to have to do what Alvin Toffler says, which is the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. Because the things we used to know are no longer going to be the things that are going to be needed as advanced technologies continue to influence our work lives, honestly, our daily lives as well. But one of the things I like to think about is specifically to some of these skills that will be needed. We used to call some of these skills soft skills. And I am a firm believer that they are not soft skills. These are essential skills. And as I said, I think they've always been there. I just think we're going to have to prioritize them. Skills such as critical thinking, complex problem solving. One of the things World Economic Forum identifies is leadership and social influence. So the reality of the 4th industrial revolution, bringing in these advanced technologies, but how those advanced technologies that are going to be integrated with humans, how are we going to navigate those, is a critical component of what this is. In fact, people are calling the 5th industrial revolution. That's the future. It's how will humans be navigating these advanced technologies and kind of leveraging, as Sudeshna, as you said, what happens to the churn and how quickly that is. There are certain things, while tasks, maybe skills are being automated, there definitely are certain things that are foundational, no matter the change coming our way. And again, I would say, those are the these essential skills that are far more human in nature. And so it's prioritizing those skills in general. I don't know, Sinead, I know you may have some thoughts on that as well. Curious. Sinead, you are on mute, my friend.
All right, I'm going to look at it from a slightly different angle, and that's the employees' expectations. So, within L&D, we're thinking about the skills and what we need to put forward. Keeping the human at the center of it when we're talking about sort of the fifth industrial revolution, and that's the human at the center. It's what are the expectations that our employees have nowadays? And that can be both a driver and it can be a response as well for the organization. And what people are looking for, what we're seeing is that people are really looking for skills that are transferable.
No.
And what's really interesting is they're not simply looking for skills that are transferable vertically, but laterally as well. What are the skills that are going to take me into new and exciting opportunities, as you said, Marie, and maybe in jobs that haven't even been thought of yet? What are you giving me that I can take forward right throughout my career? And employees see this as a right, not a perk.
And absolutely true.
That's a change. I mean, that's very different. And so we need to be prepared. We need to be thinking about as you say, the skills churn and the skills that we're needing is the expectations that the employees have that we will be providing those essential skills.
Sinead, just to capitalize on that one more comment, the concept of essential equaling transferable. I think that just as you were talking, that kind of resonates with me. That we used to kind of put the essential skills, or maybe you could call them soft skills, whatever, in a box. And if you really want to think about what's coming in the future, and again, because of AI, but because of employee-centered, concepts, I think that essential skills should equal transferable skills too. I think that's a brilliant connection there.
Completely agree. I mean, the essential skills will become the differentiators. Everybody would have the same. The technology will evolve and everybody would be at it. So this would be your competitive edge, I think.
And I think that with Emergenetics, what we're seeing is that whenever we're providing individuals with self-awareness, which is, typically our starting point, when they have that self-awareness and they have team awareness, they understand who else is in the team, then that's really starting to empower them in order to engage with the essential skills that they need, the skills that they're going to need for their job, and understand how they, with their own particular, thinking and behavioral styles, how they can start to improve their digital dexterity or their negotiation skills or whatever it might be.
Okay, I'm definitely hearing a lot of exciting times ahead. I hear new jobs, new opportunities. I see that essential skills are the core center of it all. And I hear from what Sudeshna said, leaps as disruptors. AI is a classic example of what we are going through right now. And the whole concept of employees having it as a right for themselves, and it's not a perk anymore. And that's amazing to think of it in that perspective too. But with what you just shared, I do know the entire HR L&D community has now got an equal seat at the table where decisions are being made with the boards, and they are an influential part in the org strategy as well, right? I know there is intent. I know there is definite intent from this community to really want to catch up with all that is happening and changing around them. But what do you think are some of the key inhibitors and catalysts to make this future workplace a reality? What are your thoughts?
Great question, Arun, and I'll jump in, I guess. You said inhibitors and
Catalysts.
And catalysts. I think what I would say is you could perceive it as an inhibitor or a catalyst. How about that? Because it depends on your perspective. And what's coming to mind for me when I think about the work that we've done at Emergenetics is there's trends in the workplace, right? One of them, of course, is AI. But another trend that our team is discovering is this trend of mass personalization. And Sinead, it kind of capitalizes on what you just said about employee in the center. What I mean when I say mass personalization is, as consumers, all of us, we are getting fed personalized content. You could be watching Netflix and it could be recommended for you. It's personalized content. I love the experience when I go someplace and they say, "Welcome back, Marie. Last time you ordered, would you like to order?" It's a personalized experience. Well, what organizations are doing right now is they're really focusing on how to personalize experiences for their consumers, their clients. But I think what we're finding at Emergenetics and in the work that we do is that it's not just from a consumer perspective, it's from an employee perspective. Those employees are coming into our organizations and they are increasingly expecting a personalized experience, if you will. And so they want to know, do you have my best interests at heart? Do you know what my unique development plan is? Do you know where I should be heading in the life cycle of my connection with you in the workplace? And so I think if you think of inhibitor and catalyst, if you look at mass personalization as an inhibitor, like how in the world would we do it for an organization that is, global or so significant in size? That could be perceived as an inhibitor. However, I think that if we, especially in the L&D industry and the HR field, if we look at it as a catalyst, as an opportunity to really engage our employees, to really keep them motivated in the work that they're doing for us, then it would serve as a catalyst. I think often about the role of the leader in that and the importance of things we've always known from leaders, but that empathy, perspective taking. Sometimes it's not just the development plan as a personalized experience. Sometimes it's just, do you know who I am? Do you know what drives me, what motivates me, how I prefer to do things? And I know at Emergenetics, that's one of the things we focus on, is we focus on understanding people, teams, et cetera, so that it feels it's a personalized experience and leaders can take that into consideration. Great question.
Yeah, I'm thinking that, Marie, as well, that it's like everything, it is either could be a catalyst, could be an inhibitor, but we're trying to think about how we can turn it into a catalyst. Because for me, I'm thinking the multi-generational workforces that we have. We're working with teams from Japan right the way, through EMEA, India, into the North America. And no matter where we're working with people, most organizations now are looking at, they have 4 or 5 different generations in the workplace. And that, again, depending on how you look at it, can be either the inhibitor, but it's what can you do? What strategies can you put in place to kind of turn that into a powerful catalyst? It very much drives sort of having a flexible working model, because you are, and again, go to that personalization. It's what the demands and what people will want within the different generations changes, and it really pushes us to have a more inclusive leadership style. Really to think about how can we be agile, how can we ensure that we are meeting the needs of all of the different generations, and maybe even taking a step back from that and thinking about what are the different needs. And I suppose, question that I'm always asking is, are the needs generational or are the needs behavioral? Where are the needs coming across? How can we create connections across generations? So how can we gather together those, analytical thinkers from all the the different generations and start to give them a sense of, well, actually, we have more in common than a difference, And
Absolutely. And to your question, Arun, whenever we think of in terms of an organization, what will help and what will kind of, stop, what will help something or what will kind of not help something. One thing has been always the top most in the list, and that has been leadership. this group in the call, that is the HR, L&D fraternity, they are always there to do the most for people. But how are the leaders in the organization? How does the leadership perceive culture? It's no longer a HR of a perspective to build our culture in the organization. No, it's now needed by the leader to stand in front and deliver that. So for me, if the leaders take that lead, the leaders need to lead here in the real sense and not leave it to HR to build the culture. So the readiness of the leaders might, in my view, be an inhibitor. If the leaders, because the way though we are talking about the tech advancements, what is needed in the future, the multi-generation workforce, the leaders are needed to do different things. If they do not acknowledge those things, if they do not acknowledge that they need to listen more, if they do not acknowledge that they would not be the experts now, they may have risen because they have been experts, but now they may not know everything. They may not be the person knowing everything in the room. More collaboration, allowing that collaboration to happen, that is very much needed in leadership. So unless leadership gets very intentional about this can be a roadblock for sure. So, and if leaders want to make it happen, they have to keep people as the center. And this time it has to come from top leadership and not HR.
Yeah, Sudeshna, go ahead, Sinead, go ahead.
I was just going to ask Sudeshna, do you find that there is an openness and a willingness to engage in that from the leadership groups that you work with?
I think the leaders would like to do, but leaders like to hear that also from everybody. I think sometimes we do not tell the leaders what is the right thing to do also. The leader, every time the leader also doesn't maybe know the first thing or the first right thing to do. And I think as HR, as L&D, our role as advisors or trusted advisors to the CEO or the top management, it should be this, that if they keep people as the center, because how much you say change is constant, but people are also to be delivering this at a constant pace. So if you do not keep people as the center, then that would be a roadblock. And I think, yes, there is an openness, but I think the leaders need to see that a little more clearly. I think it is still not that top priority, I would say, to your question.
There's just too many insights there. Some of them were really inhibitors for me, and some of them are revelational in its own way. Just summing up, right? I heard from the three of you that we are working in different times where we have different generations under the same roof with different needs. And I also see that generation workforce doesn't have to be seen as silos, right? We can actually leverage a lot of commonalities amidst those 4-5 generations through analytical thinkers in various ways. I know Emergenetics does a lot of research and work around this as well. And to Sudeshna's point, leaders have to lead by example. It's not a HR problem anymore, where we can just shy away and get into our day-to-day activities. It's a lot more our problem, and it's something that we need to pick up and do something about it. And also, it's a good view to see that leaders can also be inhibitors or catalysts, and that makes a huge difference in the organization's growth in the way they move forward, right? I'm definitely overwhelmed. But like the quote goes, being a student is easy. Learning is what takes hard work, right? And with that, I have a question, and I also want to pick up, Shivani has put up a question on chat. The question that I have is, we all speak of essential skills is important. Shivani has a point that she's from the cybersecurity space, and a lot of focus goes on to technical skills, upskilling in the technical world, but somehow the soft skills get overseen or essential skills get overseen. The question I have connected to that also is, how important is upskilling, reskilling in the workforce, right? Because there isn't a future workplace if there isn't a workforce. So there are components that HR and L&D teams face today in terms of time, money, ROI, and whatnot, right? And there's more at stake. What are some of the strategies and insights that you as leaders would share on how we can make it future-proof?
I'll take that one, Arun.
Yes.
I think when it comes to upskilling and reskilling, there are, as we know, there are going to be so many changes. We're seeing change constantly in the types of skills that that organizations need their people to have. And so I would take it back to, in order to future-proof it, you need to take a very foundational approach. And that foundational approach is really consider the importance of cognitive diversity across your organization, across your teams. Any team that it's cognitively diverse in nature, that has a broad range of individuals with different thinking and behavioral preferences, is going to naturally come at a problem, come up with a solution that has considered all eventualities, that will have taken a very holistic approach. And I think for a manager to have that knowledge of the people that he's working with, it's almost like a compass. It's going to help him navigate. Doesn't matter what happens. He will have that tool where he can just navigate through, whatever challenges are put to them. So, understanding your team, I think, is the key to unlocking the potential of that team and the potential of all of the individuals within that team. And I think it also goes, some of the other questions that we asked, it goes to meeting the needs of the employees as well. And so I think to future-proof, that's definitely where I would start.
Yeah, and I'd like to capitalize on that just a second, Sinead, because I will obviously in the work of Emergenetics firmly believe, because we really embrace and support cognitive diversity. It's what we teach. But when I think about future-proofing, and I think about the role of leadership in that and how important cognitive diversity is in understanding who you are as a leader and who your team is. Deloitte tells us that 86% of executives will blame a failure of transformation when they're putting change on, when all this change is coming. They'll blame the failure of that transformation on the ineffective collaboration or communication. And so where that really resonates with me, and I think about this cognitive diversity, mass personalization, as I just said, is that oftentimes our leaders, and I'm going to say that, the band, maybe even middle managers, if you will, but our leaders are often promoted or accelerated into leadership because they were really good at their job. But what has to happen as a leader is they have to be able to translate how to do the work in a way that will motivate, engage, inspire their employees. And so if you as leader don't understand how to translate or don't know how to translate, then the time investment that you're wasting time, just to be totally honest. And Arun, you mentioned time, money. We're all under the pressures of time and money in the organization. But miscommunication is a waste of time. We don't have the opportunity to be like, what do you mean you didn't understand what I just told you? Or how did you interpret it that way? I never suggested that. And so by understanding cognitive diversity, Sinead, as you just spoke to, if you really understand not only yourself and how you prefer to communicate, but how others prefer to communicate and the way that they think and they behave, if you can translate whatever it is you need to translate in a way that other people need to hear or would prefer to hear that content through cognitive diversity, then you'll save time. And by the way, translation is not just about how to translate the task or the job that needs to be accomplished. Translation from a leadership level is also translating the vision. It's translating, the direction of the organization. And so you, as leader, have to be able to do both. You have to be able to inspire and motivate and engage from the translation of vision and from the translation of, the work that needs to get accomplished. And cognitive diversity is 100% one way to do so. And I want to emphasize, it's actually some research that we've discovered at Emergenetics will actually save time in the long run, and will avoid some of these miscommunication, challenges that ultimately cost time and create ineffective problem solving and work being done in the workplace.
Great point, Marie, and it's so important when we are talking about these HR today. I'm so glad we're talking about HR strategies and L&D strategies and not tasks. We cannot view them as tasks anymore. They are strategies, and they has, as Marie said, it has to be linked with the results. We cannot have standalone things. We cannot have check in the box items any more. Those kind of learning strategies or your task, it is no longer at a task level. Everything has to be linked to the business results now. We cannot redo things also. So when we think of the cost component, low cost sometimes is good, but the cost of redoing is also too much. So you have to make your HR or learning strategies for upskilling and reskilling in a way that you do not redo it. You create high impact strategies, and that has to be created in a way that it is not a task. So you have to shift the people. If the strategy is being implemented, that is, you're shifting the people from the current state to the future state. You are making a change. You have to treat it as a change project. All the elements of change has to be incorporated in it and managed in that way, because we are no longer doing things because it is where people are not understanding that why am I in the training room, what am I doing here. No longer that. The connect has to be made. The people who are in the room in the training are very sure that they need this skill and it is required to solve which problem of the organization. So they know exactly why they are in the room, and then they get the knowledge, and then they are able to transfer that knowledge in applying it in the day-to-day work, and then you are able to reinforce it, which gets some business result. Everything has to be connected, and everything needs to be treated as an urgent change project. That's how I think the way this reskilling and the upskilling project, the strategy should be,
Sudeshna, that's just made me think about some business leaders that I was talking to yesterday who work in the HR and L&D field. And what they were also saying is that training needs to be just in time. So the training must be delivered just whenever it's needed, which is actually really difficult to achieve, because you ought to, it comes to this time of the year and it's, you're setting your budgets are starting for the new financial year and you're trying to plan everything out. These skills need to be taught just as a person needs them, and linked to the strategy as well. So not that we want to complicate it for people, but yes.
Federation. Yeah. One of the things I'm thinking, Sinead, as you're talking and listening to you as well, Sudeshna, and by the way, Mark, obviously you excel at understanding change management, but what I heard you say that I think is so powerful is it's sort of I'm going to call it the interdependence of change management strategy and people, human-centric strategy. And that interdependence has to be completely in alignment so that the entire organization understands how they're shifting the organization and how the organization can move in the right direction. And I hear both of you say, which I completely agree with, the urgency behind it. There's an urgency that comes to that. And if you want to provide mass personalization to a multi-generational workforce with an AI transitioning field of skills that are happening, all the trends that we've just been discussing, the employee base needs to feel that sense of urgency too, and honestly embrace that urgency and recognition of what's to come. So brilliant connections there.
And when employees know that if they are learning something is connected to the broader organization objective, I think that's very important. Why am I in a time management class? I have no clue why I'm in. I have heard that thing so many times. And you say, I am not going to go out and use it. Why am I here? So application at workplace, so connect it with their job, connect it with your results. Otherwise, why are you doing it? So I think it's time we re-look at these things and, just kind of get it together. I think we all are very passionate about it.
and it's evident, the passion is evident with the kind of challenges and concerns we all bring to the table, right? And to sum it all up, the way I was reading this is with change, challenges, curious times we are in, you need the compass of cognitive diversity to bring clarity, in short, right? And I see the essence of what you're saying, Marie, to your point. I haven't thought of it that way at all from a time angle, and time is expensive, right? We don't see it that way. We always calculate money through projects and ROI, etc. But time is a massive component, and it's good that you brought that perspective. And miscommunication does cost a lot. It's a big challenge that we all face in today's world. And I also love the fact that we brought in the angle of change, where we're looking at it's moving people like a huge workforce from the current to the future state. It's only possible when you have a North Star defined as to where the organization is going, and we will. That's what is going to make then the training and other plans also come in place, right? So I'm so happy that you brought these pointers out. We are moving to the final question that I have for the three of you. But before that, a question for, or rather a note to the attendees. Please drop in your questions on the Q&A section while the panelists answer the last question. And then we will pick up questions from the Q&A section later as part of the last 15 minutes of today's webinar. Yeah. So the question that I have for you is, while we all have our North Star defined in our own ways as the HR L&D teams, what do you want the HR L&D teams to do now? Like pick up things now, when they leave the webinar, when they leave the room. What do you want them to do now to be future ready? And that's something I want to hear, because that's more practical and for me to do something about, right? So I want to hear from your experiences and insights. What do you want the teams to do?
Just one.
Let's say the favorite, like the top.
Okay.
Most important.
Okay, fair.
Sinead, I think you can start this, or you can take a few seconds to.
Yeah. No, honestly, I would say, and this is strange, I am an analytical conceptual thinker. And actually, I'm going to go to my social thinking preference for this one, because I think that L&D needs to connect their L&D strategy to the engagement strategy and create a sense of belonging, because that's what I'm hearing from employees, that whilst they no longer, they're not looking for a career for life. They are looking for a career for a period of time and to develop some skills that they can take with them to the next opportunity. But whilst they are in the company, they want to belong. They want to feel valued. They want to feel heard. They want to understand where the organization is going. Go back to what Sudeshna was saying about connecting to the strategy, to what they're doing, to the strategy. And so, creating that sense of belonging by connecting the L&D strategy to your engagement strategy.
Absolutely. And I would say, it's time to leave the jargons. I have heard over the years so much about learning culture and continuous learning, and I don't see those terminologies being well defined. And I think it's high time HR and L&D comes together and says, culture, what do I mean by that? And what do I mean by a learning culture, that continuous learning? Because that's the gift you can give to the organization if you are devising that strategy pretty well. What does continuous learning mean? What does that translate into? What behavior does it show? How are the leaders going to demonstrate it, managers going to demonstrate it, and employees going to demonstrate it? Create the structures for those. I mean, it's high time we kind of really have environments where continuous learning is a part of your KPI, which is never there, so never happens. So unless you measure something, it won't happen. So we have to put these in our KPIs. Otherwise, we miss it out and think the importance of continuous learning in today's tech world. You are saying, no, we have to innovate continuously. We have to do the next thing now. So if you are going to build that skill set and reskill your employees, you have to build the infrastructure, the environment to build that sense of continuous learning. Yes, I have to do this again, and not build in a learning fatigue. So build the roadmaps, build the pathways. I think when we started MARG and that pride of being in starting a training organization, I always dreamt of this, that one day, your training investments which you make in the organization will be a part of your CTC. So I think it never, people think that way. That is an organization expenditure. It is not an organization expenditure, but it is an organization investment. But you have to translate that organization investment into my investment. And that can happen if you build a continuous learning culture and people are reskilling themselves and upskilling themselves and finding value in it. And then they say, hey, yes, it is a part of my CTC. The spend was a part of my CTC.
Wow, great. You guys took mine. No, I'm just teasing. But in all fairness, what you both talked about, I'm equally passionate about. Sinead, as you mentioned, engagement and belonging. We have research that shows that, we are literally, from social neuroscience, we are wired to want to figure out how we belong in the world, where we belong. And when employees feel that they belong to an organization, their engagement goes up, their productivity goes up, et cetera. So fabulous comment on that one. But then learning, Arun, you said my favorite quote. You said that, being a student is easy. Learning takes hard work. And if you prioritize learning the way you did, Sudeshna, and mentioned the importance of having a learning organization, your organization can just skyrocket. So I guess to provide something a little different, I guess it's kind of taking both. And what I would say is the one thing we should be prioritizing is your people strategy. I think what happens, or at least one thing we know actually we're finding in organizations, is businesses are really good at identifying their business strategy. They're really good at analyzing their information, analyzing, their current data. They're really good at identifying where they might want to head in their business strategy, and they're really good at prioritizing how that gets distributed around the organization. But what we've also found is that may not be matched with their people strategy. We go in and when we work with C-suites, organizations around the world, one of the things that we do is we challenge the C-suite to ask 4 critical questions. And it's fascinating what we're finding, because oftentimes the first 2 organizations are like, got this. And then we get to the third one. So let me tell you what I mean by that. The first question we often ask is, why do we exist? Why are we here? Now, when we work with executives, we will challenge them to think deeper than the most obvious answer. Like, so great, you're in the pharma industry. Why? Why does that matter? What really are you here for? What is the purpose that you are serving? By the way, that needs to be articulated out to the organization as well. But why? And again, a lot of organizations already figured that out. But then the next question we ask is, what are we delivering? Again, seems to be a pretty easy thing for the organizations that we worked with to answer. We know what we're delivering. We know what we're thinking of delivering even in the future. So those first 2 questions seem to be easy. And then the third question we ask is, and who do we serve? And what often happens as the C-suite or the executives are answering that question is they say, oh, well, it's our consumers, it's our clients, it's our customers, it might be our shareholders, those people in the boardroom, whatever that may be, but they don't, rarely we are finding, I should say it this way, less than 10% of the time, when we ask, who do we serve? The answer is within the walls. Who we serve are the people who work for us too, because organizations need to start to prioritize that just as much as their business strategy. And when organizations start to do that, we see things accelerate. So then the final question that we ask is, and where are we headed? And again, from a business strategy, that's what organizations are thinking about right now. They're thinking about, all the things, the trends in the workplace that we just talked about, AI, where are we headed? But they think from more externally. I think what we have to do is we have to, alongside that conversation, ask, where are we headed with our people? So just as in a business strategy, you analyze your data, you identify where you want to go, you prioritize how you're going to get there. We should be doing that with our employee base. We need to analyze what are the skills that will be needed in order for us to accomplish our business strategy. And then if we have those skills identified, especially those skills of the future, maybe the ones that I mentioned at the top of this conversation around the, essential skills. But if we prioritize that, then what we need to do, if we analyze it, we need to identify, great, where are our employees now? And what is it going to take to be able to upskill them, reskill them, to get to those skills that we need them to have in order to meet our business objectives? And then obviously prioritize the people. Prioritize that learning, as Sudeshna mentioned, that put it as equally as important as a business strategy. And sometimes I was just asked, just yesterday, I had the opportunity to do a keynote. And as I was talking, one of the questions that came out of the audience was, well, what about the boardroom? Because sometimes the boardroom only cares about that business strategy. I think it's the job of leaders. I think it's the job of our HR teams, our L&D teams, to help to inform our leaders about the data. And that's what we're trying to do at Emergenetics. The data that comes with the prioritization of people in an organization. When you do that, the success that it can literally have on the bottom line, on the return on the investment that shareholders and the boardroom, if you will, are interested in hearing. So, a little long-winded there, but people strategy would be my absolute start now. Ask those questions.
And I just want to do a plus to all the statements that you just said. I mean, Sudeshna, Sinead, and Murray. I do have some questions, and some of these questions were answered in just the recent statements that came out from this conversation. I have Yogita, who exactly asked similar to what you just mentioned, Murray. How do we make this a priority? That learning is important, upskilling is important, and it's evident, we all know it, but how do we create the sense of urgency with our leadership and managers? And I think data is a clear direction there. Bring the data, Yogita, so you can tell your leaders where the world is heading and how you can make a big difference with what you do. And I have an interesting question that has come, which is, Shantanu says he's extremely happy to know that we are talking about something that's critical and the need of the hour. But what about coaching the existing leaders that are there in the organization? What is the one thing that, if one of you can share, what's the one thing that our leaders need to have as a key takeaway to be able to make that shift happen? Because going back to Sudeshna's point, leaders can be inhibitors or catalysts, but how do we make that happen today?
I'll jump in on that first, everyone. It's only because an immediate thought just popped in my head. And by the way, sometimes when that happens, that may not be the most essential, but it just pops in my head. I think the answer to that would be that translation skill that I talked about. I think it is absolutely essential for leaders to understand the power of translation. And when I talk about this, I mean, literally, if you think about the concrete example of what translation is, it's literally trying to communicate in a language that others can understand, right? Leadership has to be able to do that. Leadership has to be able to communicate in a way that others will understand. And of course, at Emergenetics, I would say that because we would say the essential way to do that is to understand cognitive diversity, understand the way people think and behave, and then communicate in a way that will resonate with the variety of thinkers that you will have in your organization. So, my initial reaction is translation skills through cognitive diversity.
With you on that, Murray. I completely agree with you that we need a common language to be able to translate and effectively do a good job translating as leaders, right? Deepa has a question which is connected to some of the areas we've been discussing today. Deepa is asking that, to effectively cultivate a culture of curiosity in their workforce, what role does leadership and training programs play in making curiosity a foundational skill? I know cognitive diversity, Murray, with your smile, I see that's where you're heading. But along with that, is there anything else from the data and research that Emergenetics has been doing? Is there something that you would want to highlight?
Well, can I jump in just in terms of creating that curiosity? In order to create an organization that has that level of curiosity, there has to be psychological safety. And that comes from cognitive diversity is a great, it's the starting point. It's that awareness, the self-awareness, the team awareness. But if we safe, if there's that psychological safety, then individuals will feel that, that it's okay to be curious. It's okay to be innovative. It's okay to take, calculated risks. So I don't know, Marie, would you add to that?
Yeah, I would. I totally agree with you. Obviously, psychological safety is there. And that then ties to something that I mentioned about and you mentioned actually, Sinead, too, about the sense of belonging. And I was saying that we are literally wired to want to belong. Some of the data that we have from Emergenetics indicates that there can be as much as a 56% increase in job performance when people have a sense of belonging. We know that people who are feeling like they have a sense of belonging are also 6 times more likely to be engaged in the workplace, which means, by the way, that there's a higher opportunity for them to feel this sense of retention. They're going to stay. If they're engaged, if they're motivated, to have that sense of belonging, then that creates an environment where then curiosity can be a pervasive, opportunity. People who are curious people are curious naturally, and they may be curious for different reasons. That's a cognitive diversity. They may be curious about people. They may be curious about data. They may be curious about implementation. They may be curious about ideation. But people are by nature curious. However, if you don't have that environment with psychological safety and trust, that sense of belonging in the organization, that curiosity may not ever be exposed. It may not ever come out. And so often, if you think of something called idea collision, if you want true innovation, you want the ideas to collide, to be a magnet for each other, to perpetuate innovation. And you'll need to have that sense of belonging so that the curiosity, the ideation can come out. Yeah.
Absolutely. You're continuously looking for new things to get that competitive advantage to give you your results. Leaders would be, if you speak to leaders in their language, you have to speak to leaders in their language. And this adds up. Innovation is the key. And if curiosity is not encouraged, then how do you get your innovation? How do you get your next cutting edge product of tomorrow, or that service which you'll create, which will wow the world? So if you are building the right things and encouraging that, rewarding that, and make it and demonstrate that is important in the organization by leaders walking the talk. And I think that kind of work builds the curiosity, and that leads to innovation, and that leads to getting better business results. I mean, yes, for sure.
Absolutely. And I echo with all the answers that you just gave, because I think curiosity comes from psychological safety too. It's only when you are okay and have the trust to open up, can everything else nurture from it. So, and I know the power of Emergenetics is a tool that brings about cognitive diversity, psychological safety, and so much more across the organization, across all levels and people, right? So with that, I just want to sum up the 4 critical things that have come as themes from the conversation, and it was predominantly from the 4th question too, is as leaders, as HR L&D leaders, we need to keep it a lot more people-centric in everything that we do to bring about a sense of belonging, psychological safety, and build a wonderful culture for our teams and people to grow and thrive. Build the bridges between business and people strategies. And I think that's a very important takeaway. Today, they are siloed. They need to be together. They cannot be silos anymore. They need to coexist. An output, a brilliant output of that would be a continuous learning as culture, right? And as HR L&D, I also see the struggle that we struggle to influence and get a buy-in from our leaders. We need to flex. We need to bring data to them. We need to bring the ground reality around us to them and where the world is headed, so that decisions are made holistically. And Marie, to your 4 critical questions, I just fell in love with that. The why we exist, what are we delivering, who do we serve, and do we have the skills needed with our people? I think with that, we've heard from Marie, Sinead, and Sudeshna on what all we can do to build a future-focused workplace. And there's absolutely no workplace without a future-focused workforce. We did talk about insights and thoughts on meaningful strategies that need to be implemented now. So as we embark on this road less traveled, like I like to call it that, Let's travel together as one big community, explore this together, and with all the right intentions, questions, and challenges to solve. This is going to be exciting for us. The future of work won't wait, neither can we. So thank you for spending your valuable time this morning with us. We will be in touch with more such conversations. I'm Arun, and have a great day ahead. Thank you for joining in. Thank you, Mari. Thank you, Sudeshna. Thank you, Sinead.
Thank you.